This is a dangerous groups that we're dealing with now. It was a nightmare.
Flight 807, you're clear for landing, runway 7, Bravo.
All personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter. This is not a drill.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Now, as usual, I give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it in. So let's waste no time, folks. Let's get to it. Story number 1. Conflicts at the Board of Elections continues. More headlines have made local news about the election board in Youngstown, Mahoning County, after a discrimination claim there was some discrimination claims made front page news. Now, after hiring Melissa Wasco as the new deputy director, it seems that there were some who opposed this decision, thus resulting in a discrimination claims. Please fact check. I believe that made front page of the news, but it did make the Vindicator. That's why story number 1 made it this week. Story number 2. A lot of nonprofits are falling short. They fell short around the holidays as well. Churches have been feeling the heat from not being allowed to gather. The restrictions, the Red Kettle campaign at the Salvation Army also failed to meet its campaign goals. And this is not good. Now, the well-known nonprofit, the Salvation Army, also failed to meet its volunteer goals, and that's a big difference. That's the bad news. Now, the most amazing part about the story is imagine smaller nonprofits with the slim donor list, so a nonprofit smaller than these, and that just shows you why this COVID war is getting worse. Now, this is yet another example of what shutdowns and the spread of COVID-19 has done to the local business community and the local charity community, and just the climate period when it comes to fundraising and making money. That's why story number 2 made it this week. Story number 3. A new Ohio political landscape. Yes, redistricting. With Ohio losing population, a new redistricting map has been drawn, which gives Republicans a majority grip over the state of Ohio. Now, the Senate map favors Republicans in 23 out of 33 districts. Now, some local groups have complained about the new redistricting guidelines because of the new 6th district, and that's Tim Ryan and Bill Johnson's district. So we'll see how this story develops. That's why story number 3 made it this week. Story number 4. Crime still remains a problem in the city. From gunfire being reported in the new year, bringing in the New Year's, to bullets actually hitting property and people in the span of less than 2 days. Into the New Year's, crime has already become in the news. It's become a big story in the news. Now, crime problems have kept Youngstown in the news, period, all of 2021. Now, the city has faced its fair share of critics and has also faced complaints from residents also. So the city now is just asking for criminals to please try to give them a break in the city, because people are just getting very, very tired of crime. That's why story number 4 made it in this week. Big headline. Story number 5. The financial outlook for Youngstown schools looks very, very grim. It doesn't look good. Youngstown schools continue to make headlines, but this time it's about the tax levy. Now, the city needs the taxpayers. They need the taxpayers, period, to step up and vote to keep them out of a projected budget deficit of $4 million. Youngstown schools officials have had some sleepless nights, a lot of them this year, trying to meet the needs of their students. Now, the school district has had to deal with a lot this year, a lot of heartache, a lot of COVID problems, a lot of shutdowns, shortages, all that other stuff that comes along with running a district, and it is still going through some uncertain plans for a better future. The good thing is that there are now talks to get the district to put it back in the hands of the local board members. So we'll see how story number 5 develops. That's why I made it this week. Big headline. Story number 6. $2 million in economic development coming for Campbell and Struthers. The money is coming in. Economic development is big these days. So in the battle to defeat COVID-19, a lot of local communities are basking in aid money, COVID money, for that particular purpose, that one purpose. Because it's coming in for help. It's coming in handy. January 2nd, Struthers Mayor Karen Sircone Miller made front page news, grateful to use the money for economic development in her city. Karen, I'm so sorry if I'm hoping I got that name right, but I'm sure that's how you say it. But she is waiting and looking to bless the city of Struthers with some aid money for economic development. It was a very, very big article, talked about the plans for the city. Whew. Big headline. Story number 7 in the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Ooh. And they call her Kat, by the way. If I missed that name, I hope I got it right. But I'm rooting for all the ladies out there. All of them. That's why it almost made it to the top 2. Well, let's get to the top 2. Story number 7. Youngstown's financial health looks solid for now, at least. COVID-19 relief funds have given the city a lifeline when it comes to the city's mishaps after spending $4.4 million from its water fund. They misspent that money, if you remember back in the day. But the COVID money saved the day. Kyle Miasak, who got the job of city finance director after serving as interim director for some time. He has got the job, but he's looking like he's okay with the way things are looking for now. Now, he has since praised the relief money for putting the city back on track financially. That's why story number 7 almost made it to the top this week, because money pays the bills. Money keeps a smile on that lovely, lovely lady's face. Money gets the kids something for their birthday and their everyday needs. That's why story number 7, such big money in Youngstown, is big. COVID money saved the day. Story number 8 and the top local headline and developing news story that made it this week. Step right up. I got news. I got news. I got news for you. Whew. All my life, I've waited for this moment to share a story. And now we're at the top. Lucky number 8 ball. Story number 8, top local headline and developing news story that made this week. Time to evaluate how Mike DeWine has handled COVID-19. The COVID-19 stories don't seem to be letting up locally, folks. So here are just a few things, or there's a little bit of a review of how Mike DeWine has handled the virus so far. So let's take this back. Number 1. Under the guidance of former health director Amy Acton, DeWine decided to shut down the state and take to the radio waves, the airwaves, to broadcast his cabinet's plan. Every week they were on the airwaves, if you remember. Amy Acton then ended up resigning, and lawsuits were later filed because of shutdowns that affected almost about everybody's business. Number 2, reports then surfaced about troubles replacing Amy Acton, but DeWine did end up finding a replacement with Bruce Vanderhoff. So that's another one. Number 3. Then came the vaccine campaign, in which DeWine decided to create a vaccine lottery to encourage people to get vaccinated. So in all this, we're still at the same point that we were before. The cases are increasing. Now, in this story and what appears to be a failed state when dealing with COVID-19, Ohioans have pretty much given up on leadership orders to get us through the pandemic. Now, everyone has a solution, but at the moment, the data is showing that people who strengthen their immune system and stay in shape have a higher chance of beating this disease. Everything else right at the moment seems uncertain when it comes to defeating COVID, folks. Well, I hope you got something out of these local stories, and let's root for that something happens in Youngstown. They might be finally getting out of academic distress. Face side, Youngstown, oh, is it time to lean on somebody? As will they finally have something to celebrate, to look forward to, so they can try to get back on track, folks. Well, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories. So don't go anywhere. You're in the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
Tune in and don't forget to subscribe to Method 8 Inc. YouTube channel. You can also watch free public entertainment. And don't forget to show some support by visiting www.method8inc.com by buying something, clicking something, watching something, or just reading something. You can also sponsor a program as well. That's www.method8inc.com.
Method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
Oh yeah! And yes, we are chipmunks.
Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, if you learn anything, when I first started my first job, I was a paper boy. And I then ended up working at a fast food restaurant. But I learned that you have to work. And the reason why I learned that is because I used to watch my mother. She was go through so much when we were kids. And now they're talking about the work ethic of this country. And my mother just was no joke. You know, she had a sixth sense when her kids were being lazy. I mean, one minute she'd be like, kids, everything is going to be fine. We're going to eat. And then when the money was short enough, the money, better get up and do something with your life. So maybe we losing that fire, that grit to transform into something nasty to get people to work. Do you not see that the country is falling apart? We've got to get it together. And Joe is talking about giving and giving. We've got to work. But as a paper boy, I learned this. I used to have to go out in the sleet and the snow, and I ended up working for the post office later on in my life. I went to the military, but I learned from Lisa Jane, my mother, Lisa West. She hates when I call Lisa Jane, but that's all right. She said, switch it up. You got to provide a goal. You got to put a spark under these people to work. That's what you got to learn this week as we get towards our, we got African American History Month. We've got Martin Luther King's birthday next week. We got to work, folks. It's the only way. COVID or not, we've got to get up and grit. There's no way. Oh, folks, that's my story. Let's get to it. Story number 1. Federal rate hikes projected in 2 months. Now, when discussing how the federal government affects the financial market, it can get complicated. It can get very complicated. Now, as usual, usually when you try to get somebody to explain it, it's usually wise to seek professional advice, to get a professional advisor when it comes to handling these financial concerns. Now, during the COVID-19 chaos, the Fed has constantly been adjusting interest rates to keep the market steady. Now, these rates have a lot to do with borrowing rates and how money flows through the system. Now, investors are always watching these rates because these rates play a big role in the stock prices and the returns. Now, this will be the first rate increase in 3 years if you haven't been keeping an eye on the news. Now, this is according to CNBC. Now, the Fed is responding to inflation pressure. This is inflation pressure is period. This is not good when you see things rising, so the Fed is doing everything they can to adjust. Now, the article states that inflation is at its highest pace in nearly 40 years, which is not good news. That's why story number 1 made it in this week. Story number 2. The education time bomb. This story was just destined to make it in. Educators are still not happy. Students are still complaining about the education structure put in place, and conditions in the classrooms are still making front page news. COVID-19 may still be a top story, but it is keeping the education woes in the news. One Fox News report about the Chicago Teachers Union, the unhappiness going on in Chicago teachers. Now, this is with the current learning conditions. They're not happy with the current working conditions, working through COVID, and everybody is all over the place with this story. Now, the good thing about this story is that there are plans to bring students back to school, but some parents are not happy. Now, the Washington Post said this is the case in Washington, D.C. Another headline about the NYC principal who closed the school who closed schools without permission because of a staffing issue also made some headlines. Now, a bill that would let school districts divert local tax money to private education also made headlines. One last report by Forbes analyzing the education fiasco has also made headlines. So all these stories show that there's a ticking time bomb in education. Now, the fact is that the Biden administration probably just made it worse with these mandatory vaccines and kicking people off the job. Now, there's even been some news in circulation about the Navy kicking sailors out of the Navy for refusing to take the vaccine. Story number 2, and all this comes together because it affects people on the workroom floor, people who have made a career. And that's why story number 2 such a big headline, and it's still turning out to look very, very bad. That's why it's made in this week. Story number 3. The COVID-19 price tag is still a problem, folks. COVID-19 has insurance providers a bit unsettled. A loss of $44 billion in is the third largest on record, according to a Reuters report. Now, some patients are also complaining about the cost of treatment. Some people are getting a bill and they're not happy. Now, the cost to even attempt to stop COVID-19 from spreading has a lot of business owners counting pennies. I mean, some of them are not even in business anymore. Now, this story made it in because of continued financial strain. The continued financial strain that COVID-19 has put on American businesses and citizens. COVID-19 is a problem, folks. It is affecting the travel industry. It is a ripple affecting through everything because people, if they're getting kicked off the job because they're not vaccinated, it is causing a world of trouble. And that's why story number 3 made it in this week. Story number 4. The border meltdown continues. Border states are sounding the alarm on immigration. Arizona's mayor says that the city is overwhelmed with encounters with migrants. That's not good news. Now, the border meltdown is flowing into major headlines, thus keeping this story in major news. The key to this story is what people do not inform themselves about, and that is that the border officials need this story to stay alive so they can get some help. That's why story number 4 is such a big headline. It almost made it to the top 4 this week, folks. Well, those are our top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I'll be right back with the top 4, so don't go anywhere. You're on the Mediator, me, Brian West. I'll be right back. If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. And go to the website. It's method8inc.com, method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor the program. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, I had a dream, and I had a dream that I was visiting the monuments, the historical monuments that have shaped this country. And that dream could become a reality next week. And I plan to go to Georgia, visit some of Dr. King's monuments, some of the civil rights monuments, and I also plan to revisit the Freedom Center this year. And this is something that I feel needs to be done around this time. I've been reading about some of the historians. I read the story about Robert E. Lee and I believe it was General Grant, and how when he surrendered, he went to General Grant, Robert E. Lee, when he surrendered, and he said, Grant if you could feed my soldiers, they're hungry. And Grant decided to feed them, and at the end of the day, they agreed that they were all Americans, and that was it. So if you are concerned about going into the Martin Luther King's birthday and about African American History Month, and you do not know about the wars that took place, or just getting informed about Lincoln and how he was assassinated, this could be time. You have 2 months to prepare, and that's what I'm going down there for. Hopefully I get to make it, and as Lord wills, I have safe travels. But if you want to support the program, I'm doing it for you. I'm gathering footage to put on the website, to put on the show, just for you. Hopefully I can make it down there this year with all the craziness that's been going on. But if you do want to show some support, and you want to support the trip, it doesn't take much. Just stop by the store, buy something, or just go to the website, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or to sponsor the program. But I'm doing it for you. And the key to learning about the future, making the future better, is to dig deep in the past and see who lost, who won, who made a tie, who forgave, who gave up, who won, and who continues to keep the stories alive so that it never ever happens again. Now, I too used to get a spanking. Mom woke up, do something wrong, but she taught me one thing about life, teaching all of us, is that we have to learn from our past. And that's why I don't think I will be spanking my kids if I ever have something. I may holler at them, I may yank them up, but I don't think I'll hit my kids because of the ass whoopers that I took just to be here on the Mediator. I don't even think I'll be letting my kids play football, but I will put them on the football field if need be, to pay some extra bills around the house. I'll even have them running on the field with freedom, throwing up the peace sign. Ooh. And that's what I like about America. Freedom is in the air, folks. Well, let's get to it, folks. Let's get to it. That's my story. Story number 5. The anti-working movement is already a problem. People are quitting. Some are throwing in the towel with no backup plan at all. Workers' unions are all over the place in this story. There are 2 ideologies in this story. One is rebelling against the system for various reasons, and the other is trying to keep America in the global race to trade and do commerce. Now, COVID-19 is cutting into the fight to get America ahead of the competition. That's why this story made it in this week. Now, this story has to stay alive to keep the attention on what's at stake when it comes to production, gross domestic product, and trade, and just getting back to work, period. And mainly when we talk about exporting, when the goods that United States push out to make the money. That's why story number 5, such a big headline made in this week. Story number 6. The 2-party system seems to be causing more harm than good. Ooh, this story was just destined to make it in. The world has an outlook of America, and history always plays a big part in shaping the future. Now, if America stays on the course of divisive tactics within a 2-party system, this story could change the course of America's future. Now, what was labeled as an insurrection has not only put a stain on the facts, but has also stirred the pot between the 2 political institutions, the Democrats and the Republicans, and the people caught in the middle. And the sad part about it is a lot of Americans, hardworking Americans, were caught in that what was called an insurrection problem. Some of them are begging for mercy, which is never good on anybody's resume. Now, in recent years, we have also seen old racial rules, if you want to be specific. So old racial rules have been opened up also, causing riots and other protests that stray away from progress. We need progress. Now, in the midst of what is happening in the present, the world is watching, thus proving that the more divisive and the more division that floods the airwaves, the more problems America will continue to have. So we may just have to get over it, and we may just have to come together, sing Kumbaya, and get a Happy Meal. That's why story number 6 made it this week. Story number 7 and the top 2 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Whew, almost to the promised land. I've been to the mountaintop, and it is good. Story number 7, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poor. And then I'll go to Alabama and make something happen. I have a dream today. In the economic struggles, the rich seem to have made more money and the poor seem to have lost more money. Apple has become the world's first $3 trillion company in this story. Walmart's stock has continued to gain steam even through the pandemic, and the world's 500 richest people became $1 trillion richer. Now, what has made this a big story are all of the facts surrounding it and the reality that the 99% could be headed for a two-class society, and at a faster pace than originally predicted. When I say two-class, that means rich and poor, which is never good for any democracy or any world, any country. Now, this story has to stay alive for the betterment of the American people. That's why story number 7 almost made it to the top this week. Made top 2, big headline. Story number 8 and the top international headline and developing news story that made it in. The topic of voting is popping up in major news stories. This is not good. Now, Fox News reports that Chuck Schumer this is a headline, said he targets filibuster reform to pass voting rights legislation. So he targeted this specific bill this specific reform passing voter rights legislation. Now, this story is so important that Fox News even provided an audio file to read and examine it for what it is worth. This is a real deal story. Now, voting is very important in a representative democracy, and the debate is why target it now? Why target voting now? Now, first, it was the Democrats criticizing the Electoral College. Now, the party that's in the hot seat that's leading the way for voter reform is the Republican Party, which is unusual. Now, this is a big story with eyeballs all over it, because if you alter the vote, you change the course of the future in a big way, no matter what color or nationality that you are. And that's why we have to keep an eye and stay informed, especially we're getting around some very historical days. We got Martin Luther King Day coming up, and we have Black History Month, and these are all hot topics that get things moving, started a movement, started a revolution, and changed and created the foundation that we see today of America. So if you are sitting down and you just all of a sudden want to fall asleep, there is a chance that you could be falling asleep on a great idea, which is a representative democracy. And that's why story number 8 made it to the top this week. Voting is a big topic, and getting alert, getting informed, and keeping ahead of the game. That's why story number 8 made it to the top this week, folks. Well, those are our top 8 local and international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week, folks. I hope you got something out of today's program. I always get something out doing the research. As usual, I'd like to thank all the news outlets, the media, the people on the front lines, the journalists. You deserve all the credit. I'm just the media, the man in the middle. If you want to show us some support here at Method 8, it does not take much. All you have to do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. Folks, I will be back next week, looking through over 200 more stories just for you, Lord willing. But do pray that I have safe traveling mercies headed down to try to get some footage for you on the show of the monuments, and hopefully the Lord keeps his hand on me and protects me. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I'm doing it for you, so if you do want to show some support, it does not take much. All you have to do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or to sponsor a program, or stop at the store in Boardman or Youngstown. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Thank you for tuning to the Mediator with me, Brian West. Have a good week, everybody. Peace.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is